Hello, my lovelies. Let's talk about doom boxes and punishment piles. Today, I'm doing something a little bit different this week, and I'm doing my video live. It's an experiment, so let's see how it goes. Yeah, and I'm here to talk about sewing, having ADHD, and all things history bounding and historical costuming, so that you can creatively thrive through the art of sewing. So just getting some settings adjusted here. How we're going to be playing this is you can type your comments into comments, whether you're in Facebook or you're in live, and I will see them here on my screen. I hope. This is my first time doing this, so there might be some hiccups, but we'll certainly see how it goes. So today I am going to be putting on my Dr. Doom hat. No, I'm not going to be talking about the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake and the devastating tsunami that's going to be following, that's going to hit the Pacific Northwest someday. I play Cassandra enough in my day job. No, I'm talking about those spaces and containers of doom that collect the flotsam and jetsam of life, kitchen junk drawers, sewing baskets, punishment piles, and the like. So I want to thank everyone who sent in questions. So I have some questions already prepared. And if you do have questions, feel free to post them in the comments and I will get to them. Awesome. Thank you. So looking at that first question, you can go ahead and type your questions into the comments section. So that first question is, what are doom boxes? Why are doom boxes? Well, the Urban Dictionary, I know it's always dangerous to go to the Urban Dictionary, but the Urban Dictionary says that it's a term used for junk-filled boxes. And I think that if you're probably watching this, you may be very familiar with this already. Doom boxes are places where we shove things and then we forget them. If they're left too long, they can become a singularity and create their own gravitational field to draw more matter to them. So soon your sewing space is a massive black hole and time and space become all wibbly wobbly. So the next question was, what are punishment piles? Well, it's not a kink. That's a different channel. Punishment piles are similar things, but they're usually made up of unfinished projects and dashed dreams. Punishment piles tend to have more emotional gravity than doom boxes do. I mean, punishment piles often weigh on your soul. They're sitting there mocking you, often becoming an impediment to moving forward and being creative. So your punishment pile could have grown for many, many reasons. It could be unfinished projects or finished projects that didn't turn out as well as you wanted to, or they were just simply failures that you weren't able to find a solution for, or projects that you just lost interest in. I mean, my fellow squirrel brains out there will know what this is like. You hyper focus on a project until the fun is all gone, and then shove that unfinished project into a box or basket to finish someday. And then you move on to the next thing to give you that dopamine hit. So we're going to try to figure out some ways to work through this today. So the next question I got is, it was a couple of questions that I kind of smushed together here. It's just like, why do I feel so emotional or reluctant to deal with boxes and piles of stuff in my sewing room? Well, it's like you're facing a wall of overwhelm. I mean, when you're thinking about clearing out these blockages, it can seem very overwhelming and frustrating. It's hard to know where to start, and there are so many different strategies that you can try. I mean, you can hyper focus and you can just kind of go all in and hyper focus and just try to power through it, or you can take tiny bites at a time and eventually get there. Both doom boxes and punishment piles take up space in your brain and clearing them out can help to make space for creativity again. So doing this may seem overwhelming, but it can be done. But this growth and change does not happen overnight. You're not going to clean out your doom boxes or punishment pile in a single day, unless your solution is just shove everything into garbage bags and take them out and donate them. I mean, that's a valid solution. If you haven't looked in a doom box since your last move, or the move before that, or the move before that, I mean, do you really need anything in that box? I mean, that's not to say that you might not have valid reasons to have such unopened boxes. I mean, childhood treasures and other such like, those are not doom boxes. Grandma's china might be in one. No, we're talking about those boxes where you just shove shit into and tape it up maybe 10 years ago. Or maybe have sitting in your sewing space for a lot of time, just taking up space and emotional energy from you. So when we're looking at this, and we kind of think about where we get started. And really, when we're looking at that wall of overwhelm, or that pile of boxes or baskets or tubs, or whatever it is you use to store your stuff in, you want to start with kind of one thing. Figure out what's one thing you can do, because I think that once you get into the process, you're going to keep going. I know that that's kind of the way I think, is once I get started on something, it's much easier to continue. It's getting that executive function to actually get you to start the project. So it can be hard to know where to start. You could find the smallest doom box and start there. It could be a drawer in your sewing space. It could be your sewing basket. If you look at your punishment pile, are there some absolutely hopeless projects? You can kind of start there. Can you deconstruct them so that you can reuse the fabric? Is it possible to use the fabric in other projects? I mean, if they're truly hopeless, you can recycle the fabric into other things. You can just kind of release that energy of that initial project and move on from there. And you can just sort of toss all of that emotional baggage that goes along with it. I mean, a few years ago, my sewing space had become so unusable because of all the bins and boxes and stacks of just, crap that piles up over time. And it took a really radical de-stash and boom boxing to make space for my mind to even be creative again. You have so much emotion and frustration and shame wrapped up in these piles of doom boxes, and being able to release that energy is really important. So I got rid of dozens of bins of fabrics and crap. I mean, I'm a magpie on the first order, so I really have to be ruthless in my clearing out when I do it. When I see myself falling back into those old patterns, just tossing things into boxes, I really need to make sure that I have designated spaces for things. I don't want to just put them into a catch-all. I want to make sure that everything I has a space. So, I've kind of learned to get my dopamine hit from having things put away-ish. So the next question that I got is, once I got things cleaned up, how do I keep them organized? And that's a really good question, because, as squirrel brains, we get hyper-focused on something and then we go all in on it. And what we find is, once we get into our hyper-focus and do the thing for a while, we're going to be distracted by something else, and then we're going to go off and hyper-focus somewhere. So the honest answer to how do I keep my area cleaned and how do I keep them organized is, well, you probably don't 100% have perfection in this moving forward. We just need to accept the fact that our brains almost always lead us towards disorganization. You can give yourself the gift of radical acceptance and just let go of those feelings of shame and anger and all of that roiling miasma of darkness that can overwhelm you. And then you have piles of boxes again. So I want you to start by thinking about doing this little exercise. Take a piece of paper, or you can use an electronic device, and make a page with 2 columns. And start by writing in the first column those negative emotions that you've attached to the feelings around your doom boxes in punishment piles. And in the second column, I want you to kind of say the opposite of what that emotion was. And then I want you to make that the verbal equivalent of Snape's dressed in his granny's clothes. So essentially make that your Bogart. So it might say, on the one column, it might say, I feel ashamed when I can't stay organized and my sewing space becomes chaos. And then your Bogart might be, well, shame can feck right off because my brain is glorious. And if I stumble today, there's always tomorrow. So, think about that. And another one might be, well, I'm afraid that even though I work very hard and get my sewing space cleaned up, I won't be able to sew. It's just going to go back to being messy and I won't be able to sew. So your Bogart on that other column might be, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it is gone, I will turn the inner eye to its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. So let's be real. Once we get our doom boxes cleared out and our punishment piles released, they will likely return. We just need to kind of lean into that and know that much like doing the dishes, the laundry, this is going to be cyclical. You might set an annual date in your calendar to clean out your room, or you can just wait another 10 years. Both ways are valid. Our brains work the way they work. You could also set it so it's like on a monthly cycle. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. So one of the other questions that I got were, what are some tips to organize my sewing space to help slow down entropy? And this is, kind of where you have to know a little bit about the best way that your brain works and, what values you hold and how you like to do things. There's no wrong way to move forward on this. You can pick the smallest thing and start from there. You can start, like I said, in a sewing drawer, or pick your smallest sewing container, like the thing that you can move around rooms with you. Or you could pick the oldest doom box or the punishment pile with the oldest projects in it, or the newest. There's really no wrong way to do this. And then, of course, you want to approach it through a way to sort it. So, you've all heard this advice before. You sort that into piles. Are you going to keep it? Don't keep it if you don't have a place for it. If you find yourself creating other boxes of stuff from your doom box because you don't know where you can put it, don't put it down unless you have a place to put a thing. So, thinking about this, really, we want to be able to reduce friction, because one of the things that will stop us cold in our tracks, and this is true for me, and I'm feeling that this is probably true for a lot of y'all out there too. The moment we hit a friction, the moment we hit a pain point, it can stop us cold, and we will stop sorting through our stuff. So, what you might consider doing is thinking about, if you're going to go through a sewing drawer, for instance, what do you have in a sewing drawer? Well, you generally have needles and threads and scissors and measuring tapes and marking chalk. So before you even go in there, know kind of where those things are going to go, so that you can start to sort the things that you're going to keep into the place that they ought to be. And then, look at donating what you want to get rid of. A lot of people would love to take your unfinished project and finish it. You would be really surprised. Um, and then if it's not usable, you can always recycle the fabric into stuffing and batting, and might be able to use the fabric as interfacing, or for underlining garments, or for wash rags, or for sanitary pads. There's a lot of different ways that you can take what normally would be trash and recycle them into new things. So one thing that I have found, especially for us squirrel brains, is that if we can't see it, it doesn't exist. So using clear containers, what you can do is, once you get something sorted into a container, take a picture of it and print that out and put it on the front of your container. And one way that you might be able to work, if you're having a hard time just getting started, use a timer, set a timer for 5 minutes, and just work for that first 5 minutes. I find that 90% of the time, once I get through those first 5 minutes, I'm in the zone. I don't stop. It's really just getting started that is the problem. And another thing to do is, it's not a negative thing to have to ask for help. You might have a body double come in, and a body double is someone who just sort of comes in and bees in your space while you're doing something. They may not even be involved in what you're doing. They're just there as a body double. Or you could get a friend to help you organize this. Or get professional help. You can hire professional organizers, or if you have a skill, you can exchange your skill, trade that skill with the professional organizer. So, that's another way that you can get through this if you find that there's a lot of emotional blocks and just getting rid of stuff. A lot of times we've put a lot of emotion into the stuff that we have. So we want to be able to keep that stuff. What we need to do is figure out what emotion we're tying to that pile of what might be considered, stuff and crap. And how do we get rid of that emotion? Where can we redirect that emotion to? So I mentioned, starting a timer for 5 minutes. Another way of doing it is just, start in a corner. You can work your way clockwise or widdershins if you prefer. So use whatever organization system works for you. Another piece of advice I have is to, use your vertical space. You can have pegboards and shelves. If you can get it up so that you can see it, it will be very helpful. And then, like I said, make sure you have a place for everything. One of your thought processes before you even go in is thinking about where you're going to be putting things. So just kind of in conclusion, before I open up the floor to questions, when you bring things into your space, one of the things that we can really do is making a place. One of the reasons why we accumulate a lot of stuff and just stick them in boxes because we don't know where else to put them. So if you bring fabric or craft supplies into your space, where do you put them to process them? Having a designated sort of dump place that you can then sort through your things and then distribute them out into your various spots that you've pre-designated is really important, because sometimes when we're bringing stuff in, we don't have room or space to work with it. So, we just kind of dump it in a spot and we never get back to it. So that's pretty much what I have. I wanted to open this up for questions. I'll give you a few minutes to type in if you have questions. If you're on Facebook, you do have to give StreamYard permission to make comments. Okay. Well, I don't see any comments coming in. What I'm going to do is I will be around and I will be answering the comments in Facebook and in YouTube this whole week. So if you have something that you want to ask, go ahead and drop them into the comments. And this kind of ends our first Q&A. Leave down comments below to let me know how it goes. How is the sound quality? How is the video quality? This is my first time using StreamYard like this, so I'm sure there's going to be quirks in this particular one, but we're going to make it better for next time. So I hope that you found something of value here, and if you did, there's always a link to my Ko-fi down in the description below if you like it. And until next time, get vaxxed, stay safe, and I bid you joy. Bye.